20 years later, the Jonbenet Ramsey murder mystery remains a very active case. In addition to the new DNA testing, the brutality of the crime has always been a key piece of this puzzle. Because what it boils down to, investigators have said, as Jonbenet was killed, she was tortured.
The assailant placed a tightly applied ligature around her neck,
slowly torturing her. And then when they were through, they pulled that cord very hard and strangled her.
Joining me still, Bobby Brown, Joseph Scott Morgan, and Dr. William Morrone. Bobby, if I can just ask you, this notion of the torture, I think many people got that clear as day when they saw that garrote with her hair entangled in it. Was there any other evidence that indicated this was intentional torture, or that this was a byproduct of a vicious crime?
Well, what you have to ask is that, you know, okay, we are looking at a kidnapping, you know, was it an intruder, what, you know, exactly how did this happen? Well, the important thing about, you know, the means that she was killed, the garrote, you know, as an investigator, it's important for me to look at, you know, all right, at what point did you determine that, you know, if you're kidnapping her, at what point did you decide, I'm going to kill her? But not only am I going to kill her, but I'm going to torture her. You know, did that go towards that type of strangulation? It can go with a sex crime. You know, that is common. But this had gone beyond that, and it was, you know, as opposed to just strangling her, to twist that and twist the garrote and twist it and literally squeeze the life out of this little girl.
It just seems so out of place. And Joseph Scott Morgan, there is this notion as well, for those who have not seen the autopsy photographs, and I don't recommend it, it is very disturbing. She had 2 markings from the ligatures, 2. And that tells a story about the way she was strangled. What is it?
Well, with the markings that are there on the neck, what this implies is that this garrote, this ligature, was in place and it was readjusted a couple of times. So let's keep in mind, Ashley, that as was pointed out, this garrote was literally twisted. What's really striking about this case is the fact that this knot that's involved with this garrote that you find in place is very, very complex. This is something that would have taken an extended period of time to have facilitated time that would have been spent with the body. And based upon the fact that she's got this deep tissue hemorrhage that's going on and dwelling underlying this ligature, she's alive while this is going on, to the point where she was killed. Dr. Morrone pointed out a moment ago that she's got this depressed skull fracture. That's merely the coup de grace that finally finished her off, but this choking event went on for a while. You couple that along with this extensive kidnapping note that's there. This person or persons that was involved in this would have had to have been with this body and this child for an extended period of time and have had time with her in a sequestered area.
So actually that's a great point, because the timeline of all of this is very mysterious, and at the same time, forensically speaking, maybe not so much. Dr. Morrone, the notion of these 3 sort of attacks. There is the strangulation that did not result in death, and as we just heard, Joseph Scott Morgan said the ligature was moved, and then a re-strangulation where she was still alive because there is this blood pooling, as I understand it, and then this 3rd attack, this assault with some kind of a weapon, the head injury that she sustained. Help me understand when this child died in that timeline of injuries.
Well, the previous gentleman hit exactly on what happened in the strangulation. I believe the first strangulation was an upward strangulation. That's why the mark is so low. And the second strangulation that was an adjustment is from an upward, which would have been a taller person, an adult, then pulling the deceased backwards. The second strangulation is more midline, where you have thinner muscles and a more fatal effect. and the furrow in the neck created by the garrote shows the vitality of the subject at the time of the assault. So she was awake, and it was very terrible. But in a timeline, I would say that if she was being strangled, we may have an option that the head wound was first because of the accumulated blood. And if that's true, the head wound could have been an accident and not part of the assault. Whereas it's impossible to have an accidental strangulation. I'd like to inject that to say that if the head wound was after the strangulation, it might have much less blood, and the hematoma may not have accumulated. Whereas if it was before, that's how we collected so much damage up there. But a two-stage strangulation, an upward and then a backward.
It's also mystifying and fascinating at the same time. And I mean, Lord knows that we are getting better and better as crime fighters, forensically speaking, that that smoking gun gets smaller and smaller. So it'll be critical to see what these new DNA tests can tell us. Thank you so much, all three of you, for your insight. And I dare say you'll probably be invited back when we get the results of whatever is being tested. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ashley.
A mysterious death as a millionaire yoga entrepreneur is very